What could you do in a works car with works backup, you think, Frank?
Take it handy and win every rally around.
Bertie Fisher and Andrew Nesbitt have made the 1999 event a classic, as we have already said. Never has so much been provided for so many by so few.
The proudest time on the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett.
Welcome to Krunching Gears, Season 2, Episode 6. In this episode, I'm thrilled to chat to Ronan Morgan. He tells us about his early career and his first time getting paid to co-drive and making it become a career. He then went on to help organise and manage events and switching from rallying to Formula One. It's an absolutely fascinating story. He started off by telling us how he first got involved in the sport.
Yes, Kevin. I did a lot of night navigation rallies, and I would advise anybody getting into the sport, whether it's driving or co-driving or whatever, particularly co-driver navigators, to start off in night navigation rallies. They were fantastic at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were a great way of learning maps and everything else too, because I suppose it was all vital.
Yeah, maps and just time, speed, distance, to get the whole thing into your head and to get a good feeling for what the sport was all about. And of course, the safety and the regulations involved as well. So it was a great way to cut your teeth on the sport. Mm-hmm. And the very, very first person I ever went with was a chap called Paul Waters, a good friend of mine who I worked with in Smithfield Motor Company back in the day when I think it was 18 or 19. Paul has since sadly passed away at a young age. But then John Hanlon and myself teamed up, and we were like a team for a couple of years, and we did very well as driver and navigator in those night navigation rallies, and we great fun, and we're still great friends today. So it was a kind of a lifelong friendship that started out in the sport.
Okay, yeah. And then you made the move into stage rally, and it was around about 76. With a name that's still synonymous with rallying to this day, I suppose.
Well, the stage rallying, you might say it was just you cut off one and you went to the other. That wasn't the case. In those days, Kevin, there was a couple of rallies, particularly I remember well, the Aer Lingus Motor Club organised the Jumbo Rally, and then there was another, the Boreen Rally, I think. I'm not sure who organised that, maybe the MEC. But there was in the Jumbo in particular, you started at maybe 10 o'clock at night on a navigation rally, and you went right through till 5 or 6 in the morning, and you took a break for breakfast, and then you went off and did maybe a half dozen stages in the forests afterwards, and you you'd finish then about midday the following day. So that was just an unbelievable event. Yeah. Great fun. And to be able to combine the navigation first and then the stages afterwards and go right through the night. Yes. Great fun. So it was a nice introduction into stage rallies.
Mm-hmm. A little sleep, but then I suppose when you're young like that, you don't mind, do you? You just get on.
But when you talk about lack of sleep, I was talking to Billy only last week about the old circuit when we'd start on Good Friday, go Good Friday lunchtime about 12 o'clock, and then go right through the afternoon, evening, night, and then end up down in Killarney on Saturday afternoon. So that was a full kind of day, night and day out of bed, competing. Then you'd have the Sunday run around Killarney. And then on Monday, you go back up north again, back up the west coast probably. And again, another night out of bed. So you'd start Monday lunchtime and you go right through till Tuesday lunchtime. Yes. So people, when they say that, you tell them that now, think you must be off your head to do something like that. But that's the way it was. As you rightly say, we were young, had the energy, and the enthusiasm and the adrenaline to keep you going right through those 5 days. Fantastic event.
Yeah, it must have been them special days too. Can you think back on the likes of that now? In fairness, so
very special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great days.
So there was another young friend of yours, I suppose, at the time, Austin McHale, and that was around about 76 or so. You decided to give this stage rally a crack then. It was,
and Austin and I had great fun. We started out together. We were, of course, young, foolish, and of course, no fear and no sense really, I suppose, either. But Austin had a great turn of speed even in those days when he started out. And we had some great fun together, great rallies, and we learned a lot together. You know, we came up through the ranks a little bit in that year. And forgive me now, because I'm just looking up the files here. I've got the entry list for the Circuit of Wicklow Rally back in 1976, which would show Austin and myself seated at number 113. We were a late entry for the rally. Yeah. And I think we ended up third overall on the event. Brilliant. So, you know, absolutely great days. But the previous night, I remember well, Austin had this Escort twin cam. And I remember the registration number of it. I'm sure Austin and I'd be the only ones who would remember it. It was MNI 828. And the engine had to be rebuilt the night before. So we actually rebuilt the engine overnight. Got no sleep. I went home to my house. Austin went down back to his house. We both had a shower, changed into our overalls, and off we went and did the rally. So, we imagine being able to actually even build the engine. We had that skill at the time. We wouldn't be able to build an engine now.
No.
But that was the type of crack that we had and the type of things we did. Yeah. And again, all that was a huge learning curve and a huge, how would I say, huge part of my life and huge fun.
Yeah,
great crack.
As you say, can you imagine now two young guys now setting out with a Fiesta R2 or something to rebuild the engine the night before? They wouldn't do it, would they?
I know, no, you'd be going home. Early. Yeah. And you probably wouldn't be spending the night preparing the car either.
No.
For the event.
Yeah. So,
anyway,
you quickly rose through the ranks. By 78, then was it? You were sitting with Brendan Fagan.
That's right. Yeah. Brendan and I became good friends, and believe it or not, now Brendan is actually my brother-in-law.
Right.
I married Brendan's younger sister. So Brendan and I had some great success. And Brendan was really a great driver at that time and very much on the pace. So we did have quite some good successes in Escort BDA, really, in the Group 4 Escort. And then Brendan changed to a Chevette, two different Chevettes, a Chevette HS first, and then a Chevette HSR, which was supplied by DTV, Dealer Team Vauxhall, in the UK in Cambridge.
And when you think of that Chevette, that was the ultimate spec car at that time. That was the equivalent to a Focus WRC or whatever now. That was coming straight from the factory, the same as Jimmy McRae or whoever was driving at the time, So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was top of the range vehicle. Absolutely, it was great, and again, great fun. But we good successes in that, and I think that I suppose that introduction and that association with DTV was a stepping stone for me as well in my career.
Because and was it 81? Tony Pond, you were asked to sit with Tony for West Cork.
That's right.
That must have been something else for a young guy coming up through the ranks then.
Oh, sure. It was like being asked, "Did you want to go to the moon?"
Yes.
For somebody like me. So I remember Jerry Johnston was the manager of DTV at the time, who Brendan dealt with, and I remember being in work one day in McCormick McNaughton, the Caterpillar dealer, and the phone rang, and it was Jerry Johnston on the phone, and he said, "Would you be available to co-drive for Tony in West Cork?" And of course, I was I kind of started to say, Tony who? He said, Pond, of course. And I said, would I what? So, yeah, I remember well, I got 500 quid for the gig. Yeah. So little did he know that I'd given him the 500 quid.
Yeah, for the opportunity.
The opportunity. So that was just huge. I mean, for a young guy like me at the time, it was just like manna from heaven, you know. So that was really great, and that kind of kick-started my professional career, really. At 500 quid.
Yeah, and like everybody says, like Tony but he just would never get over that go left-hand drive. He always just wanted to drive right-hand, and that kind of held him back. You know, such a shame.
It did hold him back. I mean, he was a works driver. He made a good living from driving, and he ended up with a very good relationship with British Leyland then afterwards at the time, and it was a development driver for them for a lot of road vehicles and whatever afterwards. But yeah, you're right. For some reason, he had this mental block against going left-hand drive, and of course, factories then would not build right-hand drive cars just specifically to satisfy his needs. So it did stunt his career, which was a shame, because an absolutely fabulous driver, very accomplished, and actually great crack as well. Good fella.
Yes. And you sat with him again then in '82 in Belgium.
Yes, we did the Boucle de Spa rally.
Yeah.
Boucle de Spa rally in a Datsun 160J.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Run by Andy Dawson.
Yes.
At the time. Yeah.
He was Mr. Datsun at that time too, as well. Yeah.
He was Mr. Datsun, the very man. Yeah. So Boucle de Spa, another great round of the Belgian Championship, and I remember well, we didn't finish because we were going around the Spa racetrack actually, which was part of one of the stages, and the rear diff locked up solid. Right. And of course, the car spun completely. We were doing 360s all over the place, and you could just see the barrier coming closer and closer at night time. This is the middle of the night, and we eventually just came to rest close to this barrier. But nothing else to do, so we found a little cafe that was still open. Went off and had a couple of beers.
Yeah, good enough.
Until Andy Dawson came along and found us. Yeah, so that was the end of that event.
Yes. Just we'll go back to Brendan there again. Like, you know, he took quite a few ones in national rounds and back here in Ireland, and podiums in Donegal and the Ulster and Killarney. Right. And he was way ahead of his time. Like, I remember, wasn't it Squeeze Orange Juice? Like, he had, you know, brand names on the car way before that was. Yeah.
Brendan was top class at the time. He was one of the top drivers in the country, and he did attract, and he had a good commercial brain, and still has, and attracted a lot of good quality sponsors, in particular Team P. O'Reilly, who I subsequently went to work for. So Norbert Riley was a great supporter of Brendan's and a great supporter of mine too, and he had great interest in the sport as well. And in fact, Norbert actually drove Brendan's Chevette HSR one time, and I co-drove for Norbert actually in Donegal rally one year.
Right, yes.
Brendan was unavailable; he was away somewhere, and Norbert and I went off and did the rally together.
Brilliant.
So so great days.
Yes. And then in '82, like another top quality driver come along, Russell Brooks.
That's right.
You know, another one in West Cork for you again, and that went on then to do a few rounds of the West Euro Cup. I suppose that's probably the equivalent now to the ERC now, would it be?
Well, it would be, yes. Yeah. It was. We did the Haspengar rally. Yeah, and then we did Haspengar rally. I think we were second, if I'm not mistaken. And then we did Rally du Var, which was in Switzerland and south of France. And an interesting thing happened there. We were leading that rally, and we had a mechanical issue, I forget exactly what it was, at the end of one of the stages, and stopped to fix it. We had a chase car then, we stopped to fix it with the chase car, as you did in those days, of course. And we were then in a hurry to make time to get to the next stage, and a hurry on the road section. And this was 7:30 on a Sunday morning, going through a Swiss village, and police stopped us. We were speeding, and we were, as I say, leading the rally at the time. But when we got to the lunch halt, the organisers came to see us and they said, we have to withdraw you from the rally because the police said if we don't take action against you, they will lose the support of the police, which of course is paramount for any event.
Yes.
So that taught us a big lesson. So to be excluded for speeding on a rally would be kind of unusual.
Yes.
But yeah, but that happened us that day. But with Russell, great driver on the loose end, of course, as we know, with all his experience here in Ireland, all the different Irish Tarmac Championship events he did. Remember when at that time some of the events here were rounds of the British Championship.
Yes.
So Russell and Jimmy were over quite often to do the events here. So it was always a big needle between Russell and Jimmy at the time. But then Russell and I went on to do the Rally Finland, which is the 1,000 Lakes Rally at the time, and that was 82 as well. We were 6th overall on that rally, and at the time we were the highest placed non-Scandinavian drivers ever to have got that far. Clearly, the Scandinavians dominated the event, and of course, to a large extent, still do. But of course, that was before people like Saints and McRae and whatever came, and Didier Auriol made it their own then afterwards in later years. But so great event. Marvelous event.
Because I was just looking at the results from that. Like, yes, we're 6th overall. Like the top 15 were dominated by Scandinavian crews. So that made that feat even more special to be in the top 6.
That's right. That's right. It was, yeah. And of course, we did that event on a tiny budget. So there was no budget. Wasn't much budget for accommodation.
Right.
So what Russell did was he had a car. We had a Vauxhall Cavalier with a tow bar, and we borrowed a caravan. And we lived in the caravan for about 2 weeks doing the recce. So we'd go off, park the caravan somewhere in the middle of the forest, go off, do the recce that day, come back, sleep in the caravan that night, go off, then go buy a supermarket or whatever, buy more food for cooking that night, and we'd cook for ourselves and whatever. So that's the way we did it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but it was a good way to do it.
Yes.
I remember we actually had we'd use of Hannah Mikula's summer house for a couple of nights. So he was very welcoming to us up there.
That was brilliant.
Aye.
So, and then 1984, the partnership with the legendary Billy Coleman started up. How did that come about for you?
I tell you how that came about. In 1983, I was actually with John Weatherly in Citroen UK, at a contract there, and which was good for the British Championship. And John and I did well in this little Citroen Visa. However, again, we had I'd assigned another contract with Citroen UK to still continue doing the British Championship in 1984. Now, of course, the Circuit of Ireland was around at the British Championship in those years. And in the meantime, Billy came on the scene to with dealer Opel Team Ireland, with the Opel Manta, to do the Irish Tarmac Championship. So Billy and I teamed up to do Galway, which was in February.
Right, yes.
And in fact, we came second because Brendan won the rally. Billy and I were second. And then, of course, Billy was doing the full championship. So the next round was the Circuit of Ireland.
Okay.
And I couldn't go. So basically my drive with Billy was a once off to do Galway only. And as I say, successful event. But so I couldn't do the circuit with him because of my contract with Citroen UK. So lo and behold, John Weatherly was testing the Citroen Visa maybe 10 days or so before the circuit, testing it for the circuit. I wasn't there on the test. Somebody else was in the car with him. And he rolled the car on the test and destroyed it. Yeah. And they realized they couldn't repair it. And they actually pulled the plug.
Oh, right.
So they pulled the plug on him going to going to the Circuit of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember well, the kind of rumor was out then that I was available.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Michael O'Carroll actually had the rumor first that I would be available before Biddy and I even spoke. Yeah, so Michael was always on the case first with the news, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we started off. Then we said, right, great. We got together again for the circuit, and then that was the start of a very important historical part of my life, of my career.
Yeah, and what a way to start, like second go and then the circuit. Yes, won it that year. Like
that's right.
One of those, we talked about earlier there. 5 days, day and night. It was bonkers, like probably 60 something stages.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And funny enough, I'm sitting here in my office, and up there is the most special trophy I have, which is the Circuit of Ireland, my first ever international win.
Yes.
In 1984. Then with Billy, many other FIA trophies, but they're over there somewhere else. It was a great way to start to how would I say to get that victory after those 5 hard days, which I just described at the start of the interview, the 5 really long days. And that was when the circuit was really the circuit. In fact, it was the last year, it was the real full circuit that went down to Killarney and back again. The following year, 85, we went up and down to Waterford.
Okay.
But the last real full circuit would have been 1984.
Yeah. And when you get to the end of that, is it elation? Is it exhaustion? Or what is it? How do you feel by the end?
You have so much adrenaline pumping through your brains. It's no exhaustion.
No.
It's just absolute elation when you realize you're going to get there. And then it just, maybe the next day you just get, the tiredness creeps in. But sure, as I say, in fact, it didn't creep in because the next day I went off to Madeira.
Right. Yes.
To do an event with John Woodner.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was no rest. No rest. I went straight from one event to the other. So, but that was kind of normal enough in those days,
And what an event, and what a car to do it, and a Lancia 037.
Yeah, you're talking about Madeira Rally 84 that time. Yeah. Amazing to be able to have the opportunity to actually sit in one of these Lancia 037s at the time. Like, they were the ultimate car.
Yes.
They were absolutely fantastic. So it was a great opportunity. But John and I didn't finish that rally. We were sitting at this finish line of a stage, and it was downhill, and John kept his foot on the brakes, which were very hot, and the brake fluid boiled. And on the road section, the liaison section, on never forget it, a mountainous road section, we're going around a right-hand bend, and they put his foot on the brakes, and the car wouldn't stop, and we went straight into a very low wall, and destroyed the front of the car. So we were out of the rally, but when we got out of the car and looked over the side of the mountain, there was just a sheer drop on the other side. I'm glad we didn't hit the car. I didn't hit the wall with any greater pace than that.
Yes.
But yeah, good experience. Yeah, great chap. That was the one and only time John and I did a rally together. And John was a great character in the sense that he part of the Woodner dynasty.
Okay.
Lovely fella. His father was absolutely incredibly wealthy.
Right.
They owned real estate in Washington.
Okay.
And the father wanted John to come and work in the business, and John didn't want to. John was just the ultimate playboy.
Yes.
They just wanted to bum around the world and do rallies and do anything he could. Anything that was dangerous, John did.
Yes.
and sadly, it caught up with him in later life because because one of the things he started doing was stunt flying stunt planes.
Okay.
And he was doing a stunt one day and drove the aircraft straight into the ground and was killed. So yeah, it caught up with him in the end. But great chap.
Yes.
Great guy and great memories.
And then coming back to Ireland then that year, then back with Billy, then you had ones in Donegal, Cork and Killarney. Like, almost the perfect year.
It was almost the perfect year. Yeah, it really was. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we worked hard at it. And clearly we developed a very good working relationship inside the car, which is hugely important for a driver and co-driver to absolutely understand each other, trust each other, and to, I suppose, get the best for each other. And it worked really well. We gelled well. And as I say, we worked hard at it during the year, and it gave us the results we needed.
Yeah, and it gave Billy like a new lease of life, because like he'd almost kind of retired towards the end of 82, 83, hasn't he? He'd cut away back in the events he was doing. So. Oh
yeah, I mean, for me to co-drive for Billy, it was like, it's like getting that phone call about co-driving for Tony Pond, because clearly Billy is 8 years older than me. So, when I was kind of coming on the scene with the rallies, whatever, Billy was one of my heroes.
Yes.
So, and always was. I mean, he achieved so much at a young age, winning the British Championship and so on. So he was, I followed him avidly and was a huge admirer of his. And then to end up being co-driving and doing so much with one of your heroes was the ultimate for me.
Yes.
So we had, as I say, we've got a very good relationship to this day.
Brilliant. And like to show the level you were at then, 85, I spoke at now he's Pro Drive, but it was Dave Richards' rally team, Rothman's Porsche for 85. To have that level of team coming to Ireland to compete in the Tarmac Championship was brilliant in its day, wasn't it?
Well, it was. I mean, that came about with the vision of William Morrison, who was the brand manager for Rothmans in PJ Carroll's at the time.
Okay.
And, Rothmans were involved in rallying before that, not in Ireland, but elsewhere. Yeah. And, of course, Rothmans sponsored the Circuit of Ireland. Actually, the year we won it in 1984, they had sponsored the rally at that time. And then they decided to go one step further, rather than just sponsoring one event, to actually bring their own team to Ireland. And they approached Billy, and and that's how it started. And that started a fabulous relationship with Rothmans here. And of course, as I say, William was the ringmaster for the whole lot, and he contracted with Pro Drive, with David Richards, who was Dior Autosport at the time, to supply the 911 Porsches. So that was just a gorgeous car. Yeah, gorgeous on the outside. For Billy, I'm sure it was quite a difficult car to drive, but he certainly got the most out of it.
Yeah, he could make it sing. Like, we're just thinking of like Donegal 85. Like, he lost whatever it was, 2 minutes between wee niggles and then a puncture and one thing and all. But then lunchtime on the Saturday, something just seemed to click, and it's said that was probably one of Billy's finest ever drives to come back then, and just
It was. I mean, when the chips were down, he could always find the extra bit to really make the car work. Billy had a marvelous understanding of cars and a marvelous mechanical sympathy, and that's what made him very successful. He knew how to get the best out of the car without overstretching it, and very seldom would he put a mark on a car. So he just had that natural ability to do the best he possibly could with whatever machinery he had at the time, and could drive around a problem. A lot of drivers, when you see them, I mean, with many drivers who, once something goes wrong and the car is not absolutely perfect, won't drive around the issue and won't be able to manage the car properly. But he would just wring the neck out of it to the nth degree.
And also, like, I forgot about was Tour de Course. Before Donegal, like, to go there and be on the pace of the WRC regulars. Yes, I know there was like Lindsay withdrew and all, but even before that, you were still in the top 5, 6, setting very competitive times. And like we talk about, I think there was I think 40 something stages, some 50 kilometers long. That was a serious rally. To come away there from 4th overall to finish was a fantastic result.
Yes, it was. That particular rally was overshadowed by the death of Attilio Bettiga.
Mm-hmm.
He was killed in a Lancia on the first few stages, and then Lancia pulled out for the rest of the event. But I recall the one particular stage that you're talking about coming down the west coast of the island of Corsica. It was an incredibly long stage. In fact, one of the stages was actually 80 Ks. Yeah, it was just a marathon stage right down the coast on that. And Corsica, as you probably know, is incredibly twisty. So the effort to kind of navigate your way to make sure you're on the correct pace notes all the time, it takes a massive effort.
Yeah.
But worse again, there was fog on the stage.
Right.
And the fog was very dense in places. So to kind of keep the concentration to try and keep up the speed. And it's very difficult for any of us who've driven in fog on a stage. You never know if you're on the pace or not, because clearly you don't know if other people are getting a better advantage than you, if the fog is worse or better for them, and what you can see and what chances you take and how accurate your pace notes are. And to try and get on the right pace is incredibly difficult. So, yeah, I mean, when we got to the end of that, I remember we were both absolutely drained with exhaustion or just apprehension, and so happy to get to the end of that stage. So a lot of perspiration, a lot of effort went into that stage.
From both sides of the car, you know. And, like, you know, again, to show the level that Rallying was at in the mid-80s, RTE sent a film crew over to follow you for the weekend as well. Yeah. You know, like that, you know, would be unheard of now, like, as well. So that just shows you, we forget how, like, high up Rallying was thought of at the time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there was, particularly for around the Circuit of Ireland, the amount of, I suppose, publicity that was generated. And Rothmans were very instrumental in this, in bringing that to the party. But you're right, Kevin, we forget how high profile our sport was in the country at that time, and the huge cult following that we had, and how, I suppose, mainstream sport it was at the time. So it was marvelous to be part of that era.
And then, you know, we skip forward a year now to the Circuit of Ireland '86. You're back there with Rothman's team. But on the Late Show, you know, the biggest show in the country, like probably 2/3 of the population tuned in on a Friday night to watch the Late Show. And who comes on? Ronan Morgan and Ballycoleman, you know? Fantastic.
That's right, yeah. It was very funny, actually. That was during the recce for the circuit, yeah? The Late was on a Saturday night.
Yeah. Saturday night, sorry, yeah.
Oh, whenever, I don't know what night. Yeah. But I think it was a Saturday night. But anyway, yeah. And of course, that was in the days of pre-mobile phones. So Billy and I were off doing our own thing in a road-going 911 Carrera, doing the reconnaissance. And then we finished in the north, and we came back down over the border to do some stages in the south, to do some reconnaissance stage in the south. And we were stopped by the Gardaí at the border, who were given instructions to keep an eye out for us. And it was them who delivered the message to us: you get down to Dublin straight away, call William Morrison, because you're both on the Late Show tonight. That's how it happened. We didn't know. So this was about like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had to race down the road and change into our blazers and shirts and ties and whatever, and into the studio, and away we went, you know.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That was the communication at the time.
Yeah. And like Billy, he was a brilliant driver, but he kind of shone away from the limelight. You know, a lot of the times, even in service, you were the one doing the talking. You know, he felt he must have been uncomfortable doing that now, going on to Late.
Yes, he wasn't looking forward to that at all. No. Yeah, you have to do this. But anyway, Look, it is what it is, and it worked out well.
Yes. Then later in '86, you moved into the Metro. Like I'm a huge Metro fan, I have to admit, but like, what a car!
Yes, of course. You know, a huge quick Group B cars. It was a pleasure to be in a Group B car on until the time that they were banned. Massively powerful 4-wheel drive, short wheelbase though, so they'd swap ends quite quickly. But yeah, great car.
Yes. And again, Donegal that year, first time sitting in the car. I think Billy had only a very small mileage, up to the event in the car, and to come away with a win again just shows the natural talent of the guy. First time driving a four-wheel drive car, first time,
Sure.
Just to swap over back into right-hand drive after driving left-hand drive for a couple of years, just natural.
Yes. Yes, yeah. And again, you're right, Kevin. There was very little preparation, very little testing available to us at the time. The car was late coming, so yeah, so it was great. I mean, the way that he could just adapt and get the best out of the vehicle. Yeah,
it's just so then 87 was continued with the Rothmans then, but Group B was banned. The BMW M3 was come along. Fair to say, it probably wasn't very well developed for Ireland at the time. It's a difficult year for you.
Yes, it was a difficult year. It wasn't great. The car. I remember something very odd happened us on the circuit again that year when the BMW M3 going across one of the stages, one of the mountains, I forget which stage it was in the north, and the car stopped.
Okay.
Just stopped, stone dead. And our teammate was Mark Douay, at the time, and driving a sister BMW M3, and his car stopped about 500 meters up the same road. And they'd no idea what some electrical fault happened in both cars. And both came to a halt at that time. But you're right, it wasn't very good developed for certainly the Irish roads. Bernard Bega in the French Championship really had it sorted for that. It was a much different spec, a much different type of car than we had, and it kind of suited more a kind of a race style than a rally style. And of course, the French roads were much smoother and forgiving than the Irish lanes. So yeah, so we never really kind of got around the setup for an Irish tarmac rally.
Yeah. Now, you'd already at this stage then started to spread your wings and you'd went to the Middle East, but we'll come back to that. But by 89, Mark Lovell and the works Andrew Heat for Hire Sierra. To start off the year, you started off with the Mobile One Challenge.
Yes.
Brilliant.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was an amazing event. That was an event way before its time. I should even go back a few years earlier to the Ogavana Rally Sprint, which was an event that was way before its time, but we can talk about that later. But that Mobile One Rally Challenge was a great event. It was never repeated afterwards, and I don't know why, because it had a great recipe. It was basically I think 6 different works vehicles, the 6 top cars at the time: Audi Quattros, Sierra Cosworths. There was Opels there as well.
Yeah, Toyota, the Celica wasn't there as well? I think.
Celica, that's right. Yeah. So they were all supplied, and the top drivers, including Stig Blomqvist at the time, and Malcolm Wilson and David Llewellyn, and we all drove each other's cars. Yeah. So it was a marvelous format. Yeah. Because we did forestry stages. We did some tarmac stages in the Isle of Man, and we went up to Scotland as well. So we were all over the UK and the Isle of Man, actually competing in this over a period of about 6 days, and it was just fantastic, made for television. But again, this was in 1988. So if you were to repeat that again, it would be just an amazing format with top drivers and top cars and everybody driving each other's car, and then competing for a shootout, which was, I think, Blomqvist won in the end, actually.
Yeah, there was only 1 or 2 seconds between you were second, and I think it was only something like 12 or 15 seconds covered the entire field. It was and again, mainstream TV, Saturday afternoon grandstand. That was you were tuning in to watch your Liverpool Man United game or whatever. This was on, in the midst of all this as well.
That's right. You have a better memory than I have, Kevin. Yeah.
Sad, I know.
No, but it was good. It was a real close competition, yeah.
And Mark was another one of those hugely talented drivers that probably never got the credit he fully deserved either, So,
True.
Very fast and tar.
Very fast, very quick, and again, lovely, lovely man. But Mark sometimes was his own worst enemy.
Okay.
That he would tell the management what he thought in no certain terms. Yeah. So he didn't suffer fools easily. But yeah, incredibly talented on tarmac.
Yeah.
And again, a pleasure to be with them. We became very good friends. And of course, sadly, Mark passed away in a rally in the States with Roger Freeman in a Subaru when they hit a tree on a stage. But yeah, it was really sad to see that at that time it was a really black day for all of us.
Oh, it must have been.
Mark passed away. Yeah.
Yeah, because he did. He was such a lovely man. Just as you say, maybe his own worst enemy at times, but behind the wheel, there was few you could compare to him. To come to the likes of Donegal for the first time, Galway, and at that time we're seen as very specialised, and come away and won the rallies. So it just shows the mark of him. So,
yeah, we had a very successful year.
And I'm even thinking, the Manx that year, you said he always was quite happy to give two fingers to management, and that to do it in such a public way, and the Manx probably wrinkled a few at the time too.
Yeah, I mean, the story behind that was, again, Russell Brooks we were both in the Andrews Heat for Hire, Ford Sierra Cosworths. And of course, Russell had brought the Andrews sponsorship to Ford for those two cars for the championship. We were leading the rally. We were leading the Manx going into the last couple of stages. And we were told then by Ford, by Peter Ashcroft at the time, to swap places and let Russell win, because Russell went on to win the British Championship because of that. Simply because Russell had brought the funding to the team. Yeah. So, of course, Mark was absolutely livid about this being told to back off, as any driver would, and as any competitor would, which is understandable. But we were there in the service park before we left for the penultimate stage, and Barry Hinchliffe, the famous Barry Hinchliffe, was the filming for BBC at the time. And Barry, of course, did all the great rally movies over the years. And Mark told Barry what we do, and Barry said, "Right, I'll be on this particular hairpin bend towards the end of the stage." Right. So we knew where the camera would be. Yes. And that's where we purposely pulled in to let Russell through. Yes. And of course, it was all caught on camera then, So things like that didn't do Mark's career much good, No. But we great laugh. Yes. Great laugh. Yeah.
And then 1990, you had a one-off sitting back with the Pro Drive team again, with Formula One star Derek Warwick and the Subaru Legacy.
That's right.
Around that time, likes of Martin Brundle, Derek Bell, these guys all done the RAC. Some with more success than others. How did that go for you?
It was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I'd never met Derek before this, so we were invited over to David Richards, David and Karen's house, stay the night before we went off and did the recce. To do the RAC Rally GB at the time, as you rightly say. So anyway, I met Derek, and Derek and I still laugh about this to this day, because Derek is now a Formula One steward.
Okay, right.
So we do come across. Our paths still cross. Yeah. So anyway, Derek arrives up to stay the night in the Richards house. And I pitched up as well, but all my gear, for the recce, for the rally, and the overalls and the helmets and the clothing and whatever, yeah. So Derek pitches up, and we leave for the start the recce the next day. Yeah. So the team pitched up at the house with the car, the van, the whole lot, the recce car, van, everything. So I put all my gear into the van, and then Derek comes out with this little overnight bag. Yeah. And I said, where's the rest of your gear? He said, well, this is it. I said, when do you think you're going home? He said, I'll probably go home tonight. I said, hang on a second, pal. We're now starting a recce for this rally, right? The rally takes place in 2 weeks' time. We have a 10-day recce to do before the rally, and we're not going home. We're here for the next 2.5 weeks together, and we do this. I said, nobody told me that. He said, I'm a Formula One driver. I said, I thought I was just going to test this car for today, and that's it, and put the car. I said, did anybody tell you about the recce for the rally? No. So he didn't have a clue. Not a clue. So we had to go off, and we had to buy him clothes and get bits and pieces. He had to phone his missus, telling her he wouldn't be home for 2.5 weeks. And it was a disaster to start off. But we just laughed our heads off. And I just kept saying to him, I can't believe anybody could be so stupid, you know. And we just, and then we wound him up all the way around during the recce, of course. Then the lads I'd tell all the different lads, you know, Malcolm and Ian Grindrod, who were together at the time, and David Llewellyn and Phil Short, and we'd all meet up in the evening time, and we'd kind of say, right, what's the wind up today on Derek, you know, because he just didn't know anything about the sport. He really knew nothing about sport. For a guy who was involved at the top level in one end of the sport, and no clue how the other sport operated.
Yes.
So so we just had one huge laugh after the other. But then we got to the rally, and he was on it. He was on the pace.
Yes.
He was very good and well committed. Yeah. And then just unfortunately we slid off the track. To this day, he blames me because he said he couldn't understand my accent. You know? Yeah. So he reckons he blames me for calling the wrong note as we had done the recce.
Yes.
But he blames me for calling the wrong note, that he couldn't understand me. We went off the side of the track and just hit a culvert, and then it kind of destroyed the car, really.
Okay.
But it was the funniest rally I ever did. Yeah.
Sounds like a good couple of weeks, isn't it?
A good couple of weeks, and we both still have great laughs over it.
Yes. So we'll skip backwards now, I suppose. Back to 87. You were still with Billy at this stage, but you got the call then to go out to the Middle East to co-drive with Saeed Ahajri in the Porsche.
Yes, that's right. Again, it was David Richards who asked me would I go down there and do that, because again, Rothmans were sponsoring Saeed Al-Hajri in the Middle East, and ProDrive were supplying the car.
Okay. Yes.
And running the car out there. So for whatever reason, David asked me would I go down there, and that started off my career in the Middle East. In fact, my first event there was actually mid-86.
Okay.
As well, yeah. And then I did Dubai Rally in the end of 86 with Saeed, and that started off. So the next year, I kind of fitted in the Middle East Championship and the Irish Tarmac Championship at the same time. I was lucky the events didn't coincide. I think one event, Galway coincided with Qatar Rally, so I didn't do Qatar. But anyway, the rest of the events didn't coincide, so I did 2 championships in the 1 year. So that's quite busy.
And then at the end of 87, you switched over to the Mohammed Ben Sulayem team. Sorry, was that a bit like going from Man United to Liverpool, like going from Rothmans to Marlborough or whatever?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was really kind of taking the cigarette money. But no, it was a natural progression really, because I think as far as I recall, Rothmans were pulling out at the end of that year, at the end of 87, out of the Middle East.
Right.
And then I became close with Mohammed Ben Sulayem. And at the time, my great friend Sean O'Connor, who we're still great friends to this day, was the Marlborough man. He was the in charge of the Marlborough marketing team for the Middle East at the time. So Sean from Dublin. We didn't meet each other until we were both out in the Middle East together.
Right.
So yeah, and then Sean was orchestrating all Mohammed's contract and Mohammed's deal.
Mm-hmm.
So then it kind of became a natural progression that if the Rothmans term was coming to a finish, and then I ended up with Mohammed in the start of 1988.
Yeah. And what a partnership it turned out to be. And like, you know, you just look at, you know, some of the cars, the Toyota Celica, the last of the Group B ones, and then into, you know, Works Subarus, Focuses, Escorts, WRCs, like, and all proper cars run by TTE, M Sport, Pro Drive, whatever at the time, you know. Like the Middle East at that, you know, was phenomenal, the cars they had.
Yeah, absolutely. The Middle East Championship was very competitive at the time between Mohammed and Saeed. They were both great drivers, and a huge, how would I say, rivalry between them, a bit like the Coleman-McHale rivalry in Ireland at the time as well. So so I was very fortunate in my career in the Middle East, and that kind of really launched me into a different phase with Mohammed. We went on to win 10 Middle East championships together. Mohammed won 14 in total. I won 10 of them with him. I think I won 54 events down there in total over the years.
Okay.
But it was really good. And you rightly say, with some great machinery from the Group B Toyota Celica, working up to Group A Celicas and so on, and then various other machinery after that. And then with M Sport for a while with the Fords. And so it was really great fun.
Like, you know, and as well as doing the Middle East Championship, you know, you've dabbled in a few rounds of the World Championship as well. Done the Production Cup and then Group A and World Rally Car too. So like the guy had a lot of talent too.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of talent. Lots of talent. And we were very fortunate. We did many World Championship events, as you rightly say, mainly in Group N cars at the time. So it was huge experience for us. I mean, we did events in Australia, New Zealand, Argentina. So it was great to be out there in those early days, to kind of sample and to find out what all these events were like. And we realized we were actually quite competitive against the rest. So it was good.
Yeah. And this taste of the WRC give you ideas that could we bring this to Ireland? And was it 2,000 foot and mouth was rampant here, and rallying was practically non-existent. So you pulled together the Punchestown Masters.
That's right.
Was the germs of Rally Ireland already in your head at this stage? Was this the first step, or was this just a?
Not particularly, but I mean, the event, Punchestown event, we ran 3 of them in total, and they were just marvelous success. Some were better than others, but the Punchestown format was a great format. Punchestown Racecourse Management, great people to deal with. They were in trouble with the surface of their ambulance track around the racecourse, and they hadn't had racing there for some time because they just simply couldn't bring the track up to spec for an ambulance to go around it. It was way too rough, full of potholes or whatever. And fair play to Austin. Austin came along and said, right, okay, we'll help out here. And Austin, Michaela, and myself, we got the shovels out one day. So Austin got a Tarmacadam company in to lay the whole track. Right. And he did an amazing job, absolutely amazing, and didn't get the proper credit he deserved for that. But literally, we had the shovels there one day. The two of us trying to help to scrape out the tarmac and onto the track. And of course, that was a great shot in the arm for Punchestown. They really appreciated that. I would then rent the track from them, and that started off that Punchestown Rally Sprint. When, of course, as you rightly say, with foot and mouth, there was no talk of going off with people going around the country to rallies, but yet they could come to a single venue.
Yes.
So being a single venue event, it was just great.
Mm-hmm.
But the most successful time we ever had there was when we had Colin McRae
Yes.
come to visit the event in his Ford Focus.
Mm-hmm.
We were completely overwhelmed with people, with spectators, swamped everywhere. There was traffic jams for maybe 5 to 10 kilometers from all sides trying to get into the event.
Yes.
So we'd a bumper attendance. It was really great. Colin put on a fabulous show.
Yeah.
And he really enjoyed himself immensely.
Mm-hmm.
I
remember he got going in Dermot Carnegie's rallycross car as well.
I was about to say that, yeah. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
So I asked Dermot, said, would you mind if Colin drove your car? And Dermot said, yeah, no problem. And then Colin said, he was sitting in the car, I said, well, look, who will I put in the car? Who will come with me? He said, will you come with me? I said, no way. I said, I've no interest in going with you now because I've enough to do without getting into the car with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, let's get the owner of the car to sit in the car with you.
Yes.
So I said to Dermot, will you go? And Dermot said, okay. Right. So Dermot was never so scared in all his life in his own car. And Dermot is, as you know, is a brilliant driver and has been for so many years and has had an amazing career. But Dermot couldn't believe that Colin was up a gear everywhere that Dermot would have been, and he just and was, gone through one of the gates and around the race course at one of the cattle grids completely sideways and just got it straightened up in time to squeeze through the gate and turned over to Dermot and said, I'm sure you didn't think we'd make that one. And again, pulling another gear to go quicker and quicker around the track. So Dermot had a ball, and Colin had the taste of a 600 horsepower Focus opposed to his own 300 horsepower rally car. Yeah, so good days.
Yes. And was it a hard sell to M Sport or Subaru or whoever to get them to bring the car over for that one day format thing?
Well, I can't remember how I pulled it off, actually. It was difficult enough, but of course I had help from Ford Ireland and then particularly then from Subaru Ireland to get Richard Burns over in that Subaru. So really good people in Subaru Ireland at the time.
Okay.
And again, Ford as well. So they all came to the party and they realized that it was an opportunity for them and to I suppose, lean on the main teams to send over the drivers and cars.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm. So, skip forward again now a few years, Rally Ireland started to take shape.
That's right.
This was like a vision. Obviously, you and your small team, obviously at the start, obviously a small team, had this, that Ireland deserved to be on the world stage.
Yeah, true. It wasn't really, it didn't really come from us. It actually came from Fáilte Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Fáilte Ireland were the first people to recognise that there would be a benefit in attracting a round of the World Rally Championship to Ireland. I recall that they were forget the name of the exhibition, but however, they contacted ISC at the time, who were the rights holders for the World Rally Championship.
Okay.
And of course, the man in control of ISC was my good friend William Morrison from the Rothman days.
Yes.
Yeah. So the wheel came full circle again, and Fáilte Ireland said, we would look at maybe bringing something to Ireland. So William called me and said, look, would you maybe speak to these people? And that's how that started. So it was really their brainchild initially, and which turned out to be really a very clever move for them. And of course, they quickly realized that it was a vast project and couldn't do it on their own. So that's when the idea came to incorporate Northern Ireland and get Southern Ireland and the Republic together to co-fund the event, and then split the event 50-50 between us. So then Sean O'Connor and I, again, my friend Sean from the Middle East, we got together to co-promote the event. And that started off a 5-year project to actually bring the event to Ireland. Yeah. and it was speaks for itself in the success that it was when it came here in 2007.
Mm-hmm. But
So,
like, you know, that very first the candidate event, you run one day gravel, one day tar. Was that in your thought process that this could be a goer down the line, or was it just to show we can do this, or what was the thought process?
it was absolutely to show the FIA that we could run on either surface.
Okay.
And it was a great success,
Mm-hmm.
that particular candidate event. In fact, Matthew Wilson, Malcolm's son, actually won that event.
Yeah, that's right.
That very first candidate event.
Mm-hmm.
But so we ran one day, the first day on tarmac and the second day on gravel. And again, the FIA observer was well impressed to see that we could run on either surface. But of course, we wanted to make sure that there was no wriggle room for the FIA to say, oh, look, we've got too many tarmac events, we should have gravel, or vice versa.
Okay.
So we said, there we are. We can now prove we can run on either surface,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, step up to the mark and give us the slot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the slot to enter into the World Rally Championship at the time was really, really competitive.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to grab a slot in that championship, because the championship at the time, and probably still is seen to be too Northern European or European focused.
Yes.
And they did want other, I suppose, a broader reach for the championship at the time. But the way we sold it, and particularly was Sean's brainchild about it being more a political event,
Okay.
unifying, you know, on the back of the Good Friday Agreement,
Mm-hmm.
to show that we could run cross-border events very successfully,
Mm-hmm.
and the cooperation that it would generate in communities, and of course with the economic and social benefit that would also generate for both north and south. So that's how the rally was based on that.
Yes.
And of course on TV exposure. So again, it was marketed very well. It wasn't just a rally, it was a real marketing platform on which the rally was based.
And politically, you know, you're saying, like, you know, you had Peter Hain from, you know, he was the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and then Mark McSherry and Sligo, two guys that seem to, you know, pull in behind what your vision was and supported it all along the way. Like, I have visions of Peter Hain sitting with Billy doing 00 and one of the candidate events. Mark McSherry to this day is still seen his Rally Ireland jacket, you know, he'd been on the news there. I think it was something maybe over Christmas. He still has his Rally Ireland jacket on. So these two guys politically were a great help to you.
They were just amazing. I mean, without both of them, the event wouldn't have happened. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Mark, of course, being from Sligo, was hugely supportive, because the event was 50% based in Sligo, and of course 50% based in the north. So both of them really pulled together very well to make it happen. But Peter Hain, I knew previously, because Peter Hain was Secretary of State for Wales, and when I was involved in Wales Rally GB in 2001, 2, 3, as a project director for that event for 3 years. And again, that event was controlled by ISC, so that's where that relationship started. So so Peter and I knew each other from that time, because Peter was a big interest in motorsport.
Oh, right, yes.
And we met each other in Wales for Wales Rally GB. So when Peter was appointed Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, the timing couldn't have been better.
Yes.
He took up the position of Secretary of State. One of the first phone calls he got was from me. Saying, like, we need your help here. Yeah. So
congratulations on all that, but
exactly. Yeah, but however, there is a but. Yeah. So it was really fantastic, because Peter knew Max Mosley quite well.
Oh, right. Yes.
Max, of course, was the president of the FIA at that time. And I'll never forget the time when we just didn't know if all the effort and all the budget spent so far would actually bear fruit to bring this event to Ireland. We'd outlaid a lot of the funding from the government in the candidate events to bring it to a certain level where we were going to get a go or no go from the FIA. And I never forget, I was privy to be in the FIA headquarters in Place de la Concorde at the meeting where this was being decided, at this World Rally Commission meeting, and they were deciding the calendar for the following year. And Mosley was chairing the meeting, and he had to go outside and take a phone call. Yeah, and the phone call was from Peter Hain.
Okay.
And Peter Hain basically said to him, "Look, we really need this rally for political reasons."
Yes.
And of course, Max, being from a political background himself, kind of understood it, bought into it, came back into the room. He said, "We need Ireland on this calendar." And my jaw dropped. I just couldn't believe it. So we were in. We were in at that point. But had it not been for the phone call from Peter, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And then Max became a huge supporter of the event and was there for the opening ceremony in 2007.
Yeah. And like, what a way to start, wasn't it? 2007. Like, even the lead up to that event, like Galway got a bounce out of it because Grundholm come, Donegal, Loeb come, Cork, the M Sport and Citroen both were over. Like, the interest this generated, this was bringing the sport back to the level it was back in the mid 80s. It was just unbelievable, wasn't it? To see the determination by the works teams to make sure that they come to the start ramp in Sligo best prepared that they could be to take on the roads.
Sure. Oh yeah, it gave them the opportunity to do the other events first. Sure.
And that then, like, you didn't even, you probably made things as difficult as possible. Having to transport all the cars from Sligo up to Belfast to start in Stormont, like there was bound to be somewhere, Enniskillen, Sligo, wherever, to have that start. But no, take it up to, a hugely political statement like Stormont to show that this was all about the political, the tourism, everything was all brought together for that ceremonial start. It was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it was a great idea, but not without its logistical nightmares. As you rightly say, we did the scrutineering of all the cars. The base was in the Rally HQ was in Sligo, in Sligo IT. But then we had to transport all the rally cars from Sligo over to Stormont in the afternoon, get ready for the nighttime ceremonial start and super special stage up there, and then get them back from there back over to Sligo for the start of the rally proper the next day. So the Boland's, Andrew and Eamon Boland, were fantastic supporters with their NVD transporters. They got 14 of their transporters laid on and donated them to as a part of sponsorship for the rally.
Yes,
with 14 drivers to bring the whole field right over to from Sligo over to Stormont in one go. So this convoy left Sligo. Aidan Harper had organised the whole convoy, and he got the Gardaí to hand over to the PSNI, to the Police Service in Northern Ireland, and on Belcoo Bridge. So that a police escort, or Garda escort, over to Belcoo, and a police escort for the rest of the way over to Stormont, and vice versa, then the way back. So to get that kind of coordination was amazing. And then we got Aaron came to help us with, Aaron came to help us with the transportation of all the drivers by aircraft. So we all went over by air from Sligo over to Stormont and back again. So so it was a very special, logistical exercise.
Yeah, and like, we had, as they've become officially known, the Chuckle Brothers, Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness.
That's right. 2
years previous to this, like, we've been unheard of, they've been appeared together, but there they were, meeting Max Mosley. It was just such an occasion. I think, it's going to be one of the things we're going to look back in a few years' time and realise the significance of it, really. Yeah,
I mean, I'm hugely privileged. Again, here in my office, I've got an autographs on a Rally Ireland poster on my wall of Martin McGuinness and Ian Paisley. Both of them sadly have passed on at this time, but they were just great supporters. And of course, Max was delighted to meet with them, and they were to have a private audience for about 20 minutes. About an hour and 15 minutes later, Max came out beaming with the laughing at the stories that were told between the three of them. Now, this didn't suit me at all, because the timetable was now getting shoved further backwards and backwards, because Princess Anne was waiting in the wings to come in for the ceremonial start of the rally.
Okay, yes.
Princess Anne couldn't be in the same building as Martin McGuinness, so we had to get Martin out of the castle, off the premises before Princess Anne could come in. So Princess Anne came in then, and she performed the opening ceremony for flagged off the first few cars on the event. And she was a charming lady, absolutely gorgeous lady.
Brilliant.
And, was there that night. It was a cold night, but yet she was there, braved it out, and was interested, and introduced her to all the drivers and so on. So, she gave us a great send-off and a great start to the event.
And unfortunately, the weather probably didn't play ball, but even still, the helicopter shots showing Ireland, it was just superb to watch, wasn't it? Like it really sold it from the tourism perspective.
There was some fabulous scenes, particularly like one of the iconic scenes is around Mulletmore Head and whatever. That was just gorgeous. So there was some great images at that time, and we achieved the second highest audience of WRC, just behind Finland, in that year in 2007.
Unbelievable, wasn't it? And then you getting the okay to go again in 09, and not only getting the okay, but to launch the championship.
That's right.
Monte Carlo was taking a year out or whatever at that time, to get that was such a major coup, wasn't it?
True, it was. It was, great.
And again, to make things more complicated for yourself, a town stage, Donegal town here, 5 kilometers away from where I'm sitting here now, like to have the world stars going around the roads that I drive on every day was just, even to this day, I still pinch myself when I see the clips. Unbelievable. Like this was broadcast live across Europe. Again, we take that for granted now, but then that was groundbreaking.
Yeah, for the first time in your life, Kevin, you could walk to see a stage.
Yeah. You didn't have to be leaving the house at 4 o'clock in the morning,
No, you didn't. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Great days.
Yeah, what's your thoughts then on Bobby Wallace hoping to bring it back? It's going to be Northern Ireland based, but wouldn't it be such a great opportunity to see it back again?
It would absolutely be fabulous. And Bobby's a great friend of mine, and we intertwined in our careers. Bobby was also in the Middle East when I was there as well. So our kind of careers overlapped hugely all along the way. And Bobby was the man who was responsible for orchestrating that stage in Stormont when we started out in 2007. That was Bobby's baby, and he did a fabulous job on it. So he's a very good in-depth knowledge of the event. He's got very good relationships with the powers that be within Northern Ireland to make this happen. And, I would absolutely love to support him in any way I possibly can. But he's the man to do that job. Yeah. If anybody can do it, Bobby can do it.
He's going to be the man to move that mountain. If it's going to be possible, he'll move it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
So from the world of World Rally Championships, he took in some ways a small step, but in other ways a massive step to Formula One. You left Sligo to become the clerk of the course for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2009. Was this through your connections in the Middle East, or how did this come about?
Well, of course it was, yeah. But it wasn't just that kind of step, Kevin. If you go back a few years, I actually ended up, as well as co-driving for Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Mohammed became the president of his national sporting authority down in the UAE.
Okay.
And therefore had control over a number of events down there. So I ended up, he and I dovetailed a lot together, and I ended up running a couple of events like the Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge Rally, which is a round of the World Championship for cross-country rallies.
Okay.
So I ran that for him for a good number of years. I've probably run that for the last 28 years. But So I cut my teeth in the organization of events down there, and kind of built up my experience and credibility, and got to know the region very well. And then along came the advent of the Formula One coming to UAE. And because Mohammed was the president of his ASN, the National Sporting Authority there, he had the power, if you like, to, or should I say, the mandate from the FIA to run this Formula One Grand Prix as the organizer, as the sporting organizer.
Okay.
Now, he could have gone for, maybe farming it out to another team, to someone else around the world who had experience or whatever. But he said, look, we have enough experience here and we go it on our own. Okay. So it was a mammoth task. So we could put our heads together. I moved permanently down to UAE in, I think, February 2009 to prepare for the event, which was happening in November of that year. So we had a big mountain to climb. We had a lot to learn, but we built up a team there. We built up a team of about 350 people. We probably imported about another 350 people to run this race, and all under my jurisdiction as the clerk of the course. So it was a very, say, challenging time for me personally, because I had so much to learn. Yeah, but it was just hugely rewarding. It was really great fun. It was very satisfying. It was a big challenge, but we kind of met the challenge. So that was my first, I suppose, baptism of fire into Formula One. Then, as the years went on, we gradually reduced the number of people that we would invite in from outside to help us run the race. And within 3 years, we were completely self-sufficient. We did a huge amount of training and mentoring, and just building up the team in a very cohesive way. So I was very proud after 3 years to be able to run it on our own completely, which we did. And to this day, the event runs. Last December, I was there running the 12th edition of that race. And we still got some great people there as the core team who were there 12 years ago, actually still running that event. So yeah, it's people often ask how come you made the transition from rally to race or vice versa. In fact, the same principles apply. Okay. It's still motorsport. Yes. A lot of the regulations are similar. The basics are the same, and it's all about teamwork, and it's all about managing people, managing a team, and trying to achieve the goals in the best way possible. Yeah. So it wasn't that different.
And like Formula One has probably gone even beyond sport now at this stage. Like it's a phenomenon. Like, and whenever the camera, that red light comes on, and then cameras beaming around the world, you just have to be at the top of your game. You've done the same with it as you've done with Rally Ireland. You've shown initiative. You're running stage or races that starting in the evening, going into darkness. You're having the fireworks going off, all this kind of thing. It's lifting it to another level. It's becoming more of a spectacle as well.
Sure. I mean, the promoters are fantastic down there in Abu Dhabi, and always had. In fact, another friend of mine and friend of Irish motorsport, Richard Cregan, was from Maynooth here in Ireland. He was the chief executive officer of the promoter down there in Abu Dhabi when I was there. So we dovetailed in very well, because Richard organized all the promotional side. I just organized the sporting side. Okay. So it was great the way we were able to work together to achieve the same goal as two paddies down there running the show. Yes. But so we had this great understanding and good camaraderie between us, and which really, I suppose, made it hugely successful. But it was Richard who would have organized all the promotional end of it. I provided all the marshals, the medical team, the recovery teams, the scrutineering teams, and so on, to make all this happen.
Yes, and as you say, it's a huge undertaking, and to bring it together every year and to run it slick and smooth. There probably is obviously going to be wee things that are going to crop up from time to time, but it seems to be such a slick operation.
It is, yeah. It's, you know, as I say, like you, after 12 years, you certainly wanted to be slick. You know, you would have ironed out all the issues. But you're right, every single year and every hour of every day, there's always some other issue. Something happens, you've got to correct it, and you've just got to be positive and move on. But the main thing is, as you rightly say, once the greater TV audience doesn't see all the hiccups behind the scenes, then you make it look good. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, you say now you're like not just doing the Grand Prix, but you're so much other involvement. Like that whole area now, that whole region has become very significant now in world motorsport. You know, the Formula One rally raids, Dakar Rally, Extreme E was on last weekend. It must be very exciting to be involved in all that and seeing all that taking place now.
Yeah, it's amazing the way the region has developed. When I started out there, as we said, in the late 80s or mid 80s, there was nothing. There was only rallying. There was no other form of motorsport. There were no racetracks. There was not even cross-country rallies. There was just normal rallies across hard tracks. Now it's developed hugely, and it's a hotbed for motorsport within the world. And of course, Saudi Arabia are coming on stream now in a big way, and they've got big budgets to attract big events, and are doing so and are very active. And they see the opportunity that motorsport brings to their country.
Yeah, and like, you know, to have that and to have the money, yes, is great. But like, there obviously must be a great love for motorsport in the area as well. You know, to want to do that as well, there must be enthusiasm as well. You know, money's great, but you need the enthusiasm. You need the people on the ground too to make things happen as well too. So.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I know there's certainly good enthusiasm there, and also great knowledge of the sport. People are becoming much more aware of what the sport is all about.
Yeah, and I suppose we should mention Saeed Al Hajri come over here to Ireland and done a few events back in the 80s as well too, you know, so that was, you know, a great coup as well at the time, you know. So
yeah, and he enjoyed them immensely.
Yes.
Certainly did. Had a great time.
Yeah. And then 2017, you decided to go back to school, I suppose, you know, and studied a Masters in Motorsport. What was the thinking behind that? And you chose the University of Ulster.
Yes. Yeah. Quite simple, really, Kevin. Developed a great friendship with Professor David Hassan from Ulster University, who actually helped us a lot in Rally Ireland, and he carried out an economic impact study for Rally Ireland on behalf of the university. Okay. So and we got to know each other quite well, and he did say to me, he said, "Look," he said, "there's a degree in you, you know, there's because of your knowledge." He said you should really transfer your knowledge in written form and try and we mold something from it. So I made an application to the university to follow up on this master's degree course, and luckily I was accepted to do it. But I found it very difficult because, as you rightly say, go back to school after such a long time out of school wasn't easy. So it took me about 3.5 years to put together this thesis, which evolved for me on the competency framework for motorsport officials. Okay. So it was very interesting the way it turned out, and I really enjoyed it at the end. It's a very rewarding thing to do. So I have huge thanks to him for pushing me to do this and encouraging me all along the way. And he was my mentor, if you like, all along that journey. But of course, I was doing it remotely because I was in UAE at the time, and I was coming back up here to try and do some sessions here. So it wasn't too easy, but we got there at the end.
Brilliant. And I suppose we could start wrapping things up now. But like going back to your early career, you know, like one of the events that jumps out at me is the rally sprint and Hitachi rally sprint back in the late 70s. You know, even then, you know, you had Hanno Mikkola, Pentti Rikla, and a Formula One star again, Derek Daly at the time. Like, you were mixing it with them. You know, right from the get-go, you had ambitions that you wanted to go places.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was very, very ambitious and very driven, and in those days it was just great. But that Águiveánna rally sprint was amazing. That again was way before its time. Again, the brainchild of Norbert Riley, I think, and the County Kildare Motor Club. They put that together between them, and to attract such stars, absolutely amazing. And again, just made for TV, and it was a great TV spectacle.
Yes.
So to have that now would be just amazing. So why it was never kind of replicated, I don't know, but it was just a great. It happened a couple of times, a couple of years in a row, as far as I recall. But that particular year you're talking about, when you had all the stars there, including Derek Daly and Hanu and Ari and Penty as well. Yeah. So it was really, really good fun. Great match.
Yeah. So like, you know, at that age, you know, you were what, 21, 22, like, had like, if you could back and talk to yourself then, now, is there anything you would do different? Or you just enjoyed it?
The biggest regret I have, Kevin, is not keeping a record of everything I did.
Okay.
I suppose when I started out in the sport at such a young age, I had a massive interest in the sport since I was about 7 or 8 years of age.
Okay.
When I started competing, I kind of said, well, look, I'll try this for a while. And when you're that age, you don't really know what you're going to do. And, you know, you didn't know, will it be of interest to me? Will I keep going at this? Will I have the opportunity? Will I be good enough? And so maybe it's something that, you know, you mightn't continue for your whole career. Little did I know that I could possibly dream of becoming a professional co-driver. Never mind making a lifelong living out of the sport, which I still am today.
Yes.
And to I suppose I just didn't have the vision to keep a record of what I was doing. So the regret I have is not documenting, just very simply one line, the date, the event, the driver, the car, and the result. That's all I would have needed to give me a full history of what I've done through my career. And sadly, I don't have that.
No.
But, you know, there's different records which you have looked up, I think, on different websites, and I've got a pretty good idea of what I did. But I can't remember the minutiae of all the different events, of all the night navigation rallies I did, and all the different stage rallies I did, and where I was at the time. But I know I did lots and lots of events over the young years to build up my experience and to just satisfy the raw passion that I had at the time. And of course, you'd no regard for not much regard for safety or whatever. You just win, and you get, doesn't matter what the car was like and whatever.
And then go.
Yeah, exactly. But now, thankfully, we do have some great advice for people starting off in the sport, from the safety aspect of what can be done and what should not be done. So I'm all in favor of young people becoming involved in this fabulous sport. And I often say, if anybody ever gets maybe 10% of the enjoyment I've got out of it, they're going to have fabulous time being involved in the sport. But luckily, we've got great initiatives from Motorsport Ireland and from the FIA to encourage young people to become involved. And we've got the pathways for them to make sure that they stay on the right track, and got advice and mentorship for all these people. So it's great now compared to what it was when I started out.
Yeah, there's kind of a ladder almost now of progression now.
Absolutely. So, absolutely there is, And you'd encourage anybody who's starting out to make sure that they get involved with Motorsport Ireland with all their facilities.
Absolutely. And like, you know, you've talked there, you know, like Austin McHale, you're still in contact, you know, Billy Coleman, you're still, you know, you've made lifelong friends from the sport as well.
Oh, no question.
That's, you know, that just shows you know, it's not, you know, it's, yes, it's a sport, it's fun and all that, but you have friends now that you'll have friends for life out of it that you met 40, 50 years ago.
Oh, no question. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Ronan, I think on that point, I think we'll wrap it up, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and it's been fascinating to hear the stories.
Thanks, Kevin. That was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. That was Ronan Morgan and myself, Kevin Clinton, talking rally. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, could you please like and share across all social media platforms? And if you're listening to Apple Podcast, if you could please rate the podcast, it would be gratefully appreciated. Until the next time, take care, speak soon now, and bye-bye.